whoa. Hang on a minute. What happened to all the gore? Where's all the blood? Where's the brains? Where's that gratuitous violence I'm so used to? Hi, I'm Joe Dyer, horror film fanatic. And in my lifetime of watching sick flicks, I've seen my fair share of video violence. After reading a popular daily newspaper recently, I noticed an article that really caught my attention. It suggested that films were getting increasingly more violent and that the BBFC were becoming more lenient on certificating the offending material. So, why have the BBFC taken a backseat approach to the glorified gore that is strewn across our cinema screens and television sets? Are movies becoming more violent? Or is it just society becoming desensitized to it? Well, I plan on getting an answer. I'll do this by looking at the history of censorship, by performing a unique test never done before, and by getting the opinion of you. Yes, that's right, you, the general public. This is Overkill.
And so it began, my quest to find out if films really have become more grotesque of late. First stop, London, to ask the general movie-going public whether they thought films had become more violent over time. Their response was unsurprisingly...
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, more violent now. Yes.
Yeah, probably they do get away with more in film.
Yes. Yes. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Yes.
But why do they think this is?
I think nowadays young children are growing up with a higher level of violence, and therefore when they get to sort of 18 years old, the violence levels that they can sort of go and watch and feel happy with watching, I think are a lot higher.
You would change it, freedom of content and stuff, that's it.
Okay, so like change with the time.
Yeah, and it's not about patronising it.
Escape and go out and just kind of follow the film. I mean, I like the story and thriller as well. So
Okay.
I've just always been drawn to it.
Yeah, so, okay, so you can quite safely say that, I don't know how safe it is to say, that the violence, the more violent the film, the more intrigued you are by it.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. People in London love their lashings of gore and violence, and they were all in agreement that yes, violence in film has become more extreme in modern times. The public were on my side, but I am yet to find more evidence to answer my question. I think to fully understand how things used to be, we need to have ourselves a little history lesson. Welcome to the brief but complete guide to the video nasties. Our story starts with the invention of the VCR, a revolutionary machine that allowed you to view films in the privacy of your own home. A great piece of kit which meant you no longer needed to leave your home in order to catch a flick. Although, how much would something like that set you back? Well, back in 1972, it would have burned a 600-pound hole in your pocket. It wasn't until the late 70s that more than one company had a video player on the market, therefore introducing a budget player for the money-conscious movie fan. Although empty wallets wasn't to be the only problem facing this new format, as pirates begun to flood the market. No, not that kind of pirate. Due to the video format's flawed copy protection system, many of the major studios showed concern over piracy of their product and refused to release any more of their modern titles onto VHS. With video stores losing business and the VHS empire slowly crumbling, a saviour was in need. Well, that saviour came in a very unexpected form, the low-budget foreign horror film. Most of them coming from Italy, the market was flooded with badly dubbed horror films, packed with loads of gore and some of the worst acting ever seen by a mainstream audience. But being the only thing now available outside of a cinema, people went crazy for this new wave of atrocities, and soon the video format was officially back in business. That was until 1982, when one of the distributors of the films, Vipco, decided to take out advertisements in magazines for what was to become one of the most notorious videos ever released. Yes, that's right, it was the Driller Killer. Although, don't go thinking that this was any ordinary two huge faces in front of a background scene kind of movie poster that we're used to today. Oh no, this one really upset a lot of people. Sure, it had the one huge head, but it was screaming while being opened up with an electric drill. Of course, this resulted in the usual public hysteria and kept the Advertising Standards Agency busy for a few weeks. Although, due to the amount of coverage the story was getting, it wasn't just the ISA's office that was kept busy. The video stores were flooded with people, desperate to see what all the fuss was about, and this kept the Driller Killer flying in and out of the door. To be honest, the film was about as exciting as your granddad's wardrobe, and as terrifying as, well, your granddad's wardrobe. But that didn't stop the video renting public from snapping it up off the shelves whenever it came back in stock. As you may have guessed, the other distributors picked up on Vipco's idea and started advertising their own films with risque poster art and macabre marketing ploys. Controversy had never been so popular, until one company took it one step too far and unleashed an unruly force upon the world. One that would become an enormous thorn in the side of every broadcasting giant, every civil servant at 10 Downing Street, and every fan of home video entertainment. A lone crusader with a mission to clean up the media world. Her name, dare you ask? And who was responsible for bringing forth this dark cloud over the medium of video? A company called Go Video, who thought it would be a mighty fine publicity stunt to send Mary Whitehouse a letter of complaint about the film that they were promoting at the time, the infamous Cannibal Holocaust. Whitehouse and her group, the National Viewers and Listeners Association, took to the streets in a battle against what had now been described as the video nasties. With all the public furor about these vile videos, the news media felt it necessary to get involved and add a shed load of fuel to the fire. The Sunday Times was the first to jump on the bandwagon with their How High Street Horror is Invading the Home article in 1982, which also sparked the Daily Mail's interest and soon led to their campaign to ban the sadist videos. The Director of Public Prosecutions at the time sat up and took notice, and brought forward the Obscene Publications Act, an act that had previously only been used to monitor pornographic films. Anything that the DPP felt was in breach of the act would call a prosecution against all who were involved in the making of the film. Although, with the sheer amount of videos in the market at the time, he wasn't quite sure what he was actually looking for. So when police were asked to go to the video stores in the area and seize what could be in breach of the act without being given any specific titles, well, as you can imagine, they made a right pig's ear of it. Titles such as The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas were seized as they were thought to be pornographic. Nothing was safe. Endless Love, a Brooke Shields romantic drama, was lifted due to his tagline, "She is 15, he is 17. Ooh la la." After realizing that the majority of the films seized were about as offensive as an episode of the Antiques Roadshow, the DPP compiled a definitive list of 75 or possibly offensive films, which was cleverly named the DPP list. Even though 75 were included on the list, only 39 were successfully prosecuted under the Obscene Publications Act. They are as follows. So while police up and down the country were raiding video shops and people's homes, looking for the nasties on their list, Mary Whitehouse was building bridges and found a political ally in this man. No, that's not Paddy from Emmerdale. It was Conservative MP Graham Bright, and with Mary's knowledge on the subject of video nasties, they were able to create the Video Recordings Bill, a private member's bill which would enforce stricter guidelines on video censorship. This bill was passed and became the Video Recordings Act 1984, which upgraded the BBFC's role at the time to not only regulate cinema releases, but also video releases. The BBFC changed their name to, well, the BBFC, except the C now stands for classification rather than censors, and the rating systems that restrict minors from seeing bad stuff were put in place. And there you have it. The horrible films were banned, there were spaces on the shelves for films that were actually any good, and the UK was safe, thanks to uptight government bodies, over-exaggerated news reporting, and of course, everyone's favourite old lady, Mary Whitehouse. We now know the history, but what makes a violent film, well, violent? Is it simply scenes of visual bloodshed that have become more macabre? Well, in a unique survey, I invited 25 people ranging from the age of 19 to 74 to take part in what I hoped would find the answer I'd been looking for. I created a montage of scenes consisting of controversial films from the 70s and 80s, as well as brutal films of more recent years, all of which were separated into categories based on the kind of violence being portrayed. Those categories are as follows. And finally, the bonus round, which we call the familiar scenes round, in which scenes from both films have similar themes. In this case, forced abortion by tearing the fetus through the stomach. Tasty. And the results were just as I suspected. Out of the 5 categories shown, 23 out of the 25 people believed that the more recent movie was the most graphic, with the other 2 thinking that Cannibal Holocaust was more disturbing than The Devil's Rejects, which, to be honest, is a fair point, considering the real animal killing footage displayed in Holocaust which brought one of them to tears. Although despite these 2 exceptions, a definitive 92% of the votes were more shocked by the modern releases. As an additional question, I asked which of the 2 films in each category they believed were the most controversial at time of release, which surprisingly showed a different set of results. Every film selected that represented the older generation of cinema was on the finalised DPP list and was successfully prosecuted under the Video Recordings Act. Despite some negative press for some of the new releases, none of them could possibly rival the controversy that the earlier films had caused. Yet 20 out of the 25 people that had decided that they were more upset by the footage in the more recent films had voted that they believed the earlier film to be the most controversial. Was it because they had prior knowledge of this subject which led them to tick what I believe to be the correct answer? Or have they essentially solved the riddle I had been trying to complete all along? With my journey coming to an end, I believe that yes, there is a definitive answer to this question. Both the governing bodies and audiences that existed at the time of the Video Nasties fiasco were taken by surprise when these violent films were released. Nothing like this had ever been done before, other than the early works of Herschel Gordon Lewis or Dario Argento. Gore effects were only ever used in small campy doses on the sets of Hammer horror classics. There was no longer a mythical creature drawing minute amounts of blood by biting necks. The new wave of horror consisted of psychopathic freaks taking great pleasure in lopping off limbs with household objects, a concept so realistic and so easily repeatable by potential copycat nutjobs that it sent the country into a complete panic, which obviously resulted in the censoring, prosecution and in some cases outright banning of the films. As the years have gone on, we have seen our copycat killers. We have seen images of the aforementioned psycho freaks lopping off limbs whenever we turn on the news and see executions in the Middle East. Times have changed, and as a result of this, we have become more tolerant to the amount of violence we absorb on a daily basis. So, through no faults of our own, we have become desensitized to the amount of disturbing images we choose to see. Sure, there are still some people who notice it more than others, and it is these individuals that bring it to our attention through the daily media. To conclude, from the results of the survey I conducted along with the street interviews I performed, there is a clear belief that films have become more violent over time. And the reason? Because as a nation, as a global community, we are constantly being reminded of the sometimes sick and naturally violent world we live in through the news media. And through this consistent stream of depressing information, we are becoming less shocked by what can be seen in a world that is non-existent. Yes, the world of motion picture fiction. Okay, so it is more explicit in its depiction of events, but we can handle it because after all, no matter what despicable act is being performed on screen, there is almost definitely worse going on outside your front door.